everybody. Welcome to our podcast, The Old College Try. I'm Peg Keough, joined by my guest, Joe Korfmacher. Joe is one of our admissions experts here at CAP. He has years of experience working with families on the admissions side at a private high school in New Jersey, and he now works with us doing one-on-one work with students. Today, Joe and I will be talking about AP classes, dual enrollment classes, and honors classes. How do they differ? How are they looked at by the admissions committees at colleges? And do they actually save you money on the cost of college? So stick around, you won't want to miss this. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I am here today with Joe Korfmacher, one of our pros. He is one of our admission expert pros. He's been on the pod with me before, but welcome back, Joe. Happy to have you again. So a bunch of you probably know Joe. But Joe, you want to just take a minute, just share, give me your resume in like 3 quick bullets.
You got it. So yeah, thanks for having me. I reside in New Jersey, a suburb outside New York City, and I've been doing college admissions counseling for almost 18 years now, 10 of which were on the high school side. And the majority of those as a director of college counseling at a private high school in Manhattan. And yeah, the last 7 or 8 years I've been doing private college advising for another company now for over a year and a half with College Aid Pro.
Yeah, we're excited to bring you on. We all knew you for a while, and then you got to join the team, so it was great. Okay, so today I am going to be tapping Joe's brain all about, because I know a lot of you listening are going to be like, yeah, my child has that as option. So we want to go deep into dual enrollment, AP classes. Some schools or districts call them honors classes. So we're going to talk all about that, what they mean, how that can affect the financial picture. Does it definitely affect it? So we're gonna get in the weeds on that today. But before we do, we always share a song. So if this is your first time listening, Matt Carpenter and I are super into music. So we just thought it would be fun. Share a song that we love, an artist we love. And our wonderful producer has created a song list that you guys can all move over to your Spotify and you can enjoy all of our songs. So Joe is going to share one of his favorites before we get going.
My last one was on here was by Darius Rucker, and this one is Bottle Rockets by Scotty McCreery, and it actually features a famous Hootie and the Blowfish song within the song, which is why I like it so much. But Scotty McCreery, Bottle Rockets. Pretty new. I think it was released last year.
All right. And I told Joe in the green room that I meant to listen to that because he had shared it earlier, and I haven't yet. So I definitely will. Wagon Wheel. My daughter just got married. Of course, that was played at the wedding because it's a huge wedding song, and everybody loves it. So that's a great tune. So, all right. Thanks for that. So, let's get into the nitty-gritty here and talk about these quote-unquote advanced courses. So let's start with AP, advanced classes. So advanced placement classes. So let's, what are they? Well, I'll just hit you. So first, what are they?
So AP classes, AP stands for advanced placement. They're courses that follow curriculum that's produced, authorized by the College Board. So the same organization where you would take the SAT from or through. And they're designed to, simulate, approximate introductory college level courses. And most of them will culminate with an exam that's scored 1 to 5, 5 being the top that you can get. And these courses and exams, serve different purposes. The course grade appears on the high school transcript, and that matters to admissions for sure. And that's often more important when I tell families than the score in some ways. And we'll get into that a little bit more. And the exam score may qualify the student for college credit or placement, but a big emphasis on may there. So overview of that, and they're, I think a couple dozen different courses. They just added a few the past year or two. But yeah, those are what AP classes are.
Yeah, so is it pretty uniform? Do all high schools offer the same ones? They offer all these half a dozen? How does that work?
Um, so no, AP availability, really varies a ton. Some high schools offer more than 20 AP courses. All of them, a couple dozen of them. Others may offer only a handful. Some don't offer them at all. And definitely a question I get all the time, like, my high school only has 6 APs and we can only take them as a junior and senior, but my friend's high school, they can start taking them as a freshman. They can take AP World History as a freshman and take 22 by the time they graduate. That doesn't seem fair, makes me look potentially less rigorous. But yeah, every school is a little different. Try your hardest as a parent, who I'm assuming is listening to this podcast, not to compare your school to other schools when it comes to courses that they offer. And students are not expected, from the college end to take courses that their high school does not offer. You certainly can. There are ways to go about that we can get into if you want, but they're not expected to by the college admissions.
Yeah, yeah. And you kind of hinted to this before that there's kind of two pieces of this. There's taking APs and how that looks when you're applying for admission versus the financial side of taking APs, and that might replace a course that's going to be required. So, and this is kind of my take on it. I am not an admissions expert, but um, as far as taking APs, what I just from doing this forever,
Mm.
colleges want to see that a student is challenging themselves, right? So if my daughter had a friend like this, straight A, brilliant kid, but on paper, it was kind of clear he didn't really challenge himself much. He sat for the SAT, perfect score, no prep. He didn't get into a selective college because I think they read through the lines and like he didn't challenge himself because he didn't push himself in high school to take more APs so we could see how he was doing. What I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, like a B plus in an AP versus straight A's never taking AP shows,
Yeah.
all right, this kid's pushing the envelope, trying to challenge themselves.
Yeah, and it's a question I get all the time from parents. I've been getting it for the last 18 years. Like, Joe, what's better? Should my son take sort of an easier caseload and just get straight A's, a 4.0 GPA, or should he challenge himself and start taking APs junior year, senior year, maybe end up with 12 APs, a bunch of honors courses, but potentially get some B's in them and lower the GPA a bit? And my answer is always, and they ask like, what's better? And the answer is it's best to take the most rigorous course load and get all A's in them. That's not always possible. But when, and it's much more nuanced than just A or B. But if you have to choose, yeah, if you're looking at to apply, if you're applying to potentially, pretty selective colleges, the admission counselors will look at your school profile. They'll know that your school offers 24 APs. And if you have taken zero, that will negatively impact your chances of getting into a selective school. They would rather you see yourself challenge yourself and potentially get a B or two along the way, but continue with those more advanced classes.
Yeah, yeah. And I would just, as a parent and a professional, would like to do a plug for don't get on the crazy train around this.
Mm.
Not every kid if there's 20 APs available at your school, your child. Your child should be taking the curriculum that is best for them. I had a daughter who was studying social work and a math kid as a son, twins, same time. They weren't taking the same APs, they weren't taking the same number of APs. Like, really focus on who your child is and don't get sucked into this trap of, well, they have to get into these certain kind of schools and then they're miserable. They're taking way too many APs. even if they do okay, in my opinion, if they're miserable and they're not able to be a kid and do the activities that they want to be doing and developing other parts of their life, I just see that as a huge loss. I don't know how you feel about that,
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah, and I often will say, like, I do want student. I think it's important to to stretch yourself a little bit, get out of your comfort zone in courses, but you don't want them to snap, right? And really important as you're looking at the the 4 years of high school. What are your students strongest, their strengths, what academic areas are most relevant to them, and then, really it's over. And I've always said as a counselor in the school system, like my main concern is your emotional well-being. Like it's not worth it to, push yourself for 20 APs because it doesn't guarantee anything. But if you can succeed with challenging courses and adding more each year while maintaining your sleep, while maintaining healthy habits, and avoiding, kind of that breakdown, then go for it. It's great, but none of this is in a vacuum. So important to, make sure that each individual student family are having these discussions along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as the financial side, that, maybe I can save money and my child graduates in 3.5 years, maybe. The devil's in the details of, oh, if you get a 5 on calculus, I forget what the first one was, BC, the first one,
AB, yeah, AB.
AB,
It
like
goes
my
in
son
alphabetical
did.
order.
Well,
Alphabetical order.
yeah.
Pegged. AB, BC.
What? Yeah.
It goes in alphabetical order.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Oh,
Yeah, like my son got a 5 on the AP one, so IU, where he went, said, "All right, you don't have to take business calculus." That didn't save me a semester. It helped, but and that's a great question for you. Like, and I know it's going to vary from school to school. So if a
yeah.
student gets a 5, is that pretty much like, yeah, that'll come over and replace something, or not necessarily?
Potentially, but students never should assume that it will happen.
Yeah.
And again, I believe that taking the course itself, challenging yourself if you can, and doing well in the class, that grade you get in the transcript really should be your main focus.
Oh, all
And then, of
right.
course, yeah, preparing to do your best on the test. That you can put the scores on the college applications; they'll look at it. Um, but families that are just loading up their child with APs with the hope that it will reduce college costs and the lengths, it's just not always the case. We have to remember that college, they're businesses, and you pay them for the amount of courses that you take. So a lot of colleges want you to pay them to take your course. So even though you took an AP, they're not going to give you credit for that and reduce your time there. And other colleges just don't view that the AP course, you know, and those credits that you could get are the same value as 4 years of those schools' credits and classes. But this is something you can definitely research. And as you are, halfway through high school, if you have an idea potential at some schools, like maybe some of your state schools, some local private schools, go on their website, call their admissions officers, ask them that. Say, do you take credit for APs? What scores have to be? Usually it's a 5 and 4, sometimes a 3. And what does that look like at that school? You may end up with 10 schools that you want to apply to, and none of them take APs credits. Half of them may. So that's part of the research that you want to do early. But no one should take APs just solely based on the reason that it will cut down the cost of college.
Yeah, yeah, and then sometimes they'll come in as humanities and you might only need 6 credits and now you got 12, but that's not helping you graduate so early.
And,
So good point.
and,
Okay.
and
Yeah, so let's talk about dual enrollment. So what's that and how does that differ from AP?
yeah. And I also just real quick at the cost wanted to say, like, you actually spend money, just so you know, taking APs. It's not a huge fee, but the fee, I think it's like $100, per exam. Some schools, some states will subsidize that, but something for parents to be aware of too. Like, you may not save anything on college, and you actually will spend a little money on taking the test
Yeah,
itself.
that's a good call. I remember paying those $100 for
Yeah.
my kids back then.
And
Yep, yep.
I'm no mathematician, but if you're taking 20 tests, that's a couple $1,000.
Yep.
What
Yeah.
you're spending.
Good call. Okay, so what about dual enrollment? So what's that?
Yeah, dual enrollment. I grew up going to public high school in Jersey. We had APs, and dual enrollment was never something I was even aware of until I got into this field for my career. But dual enrollment is separate, is completely different than AP. It allows a high school student to take college level courses that are actually connected to a specific college, whether it's a local community college or just a local college, a state school. And they earn both high school credit and college credit. So that's where the dual enrollment name comes from. And there's a variety of ways that students take this. Sometimes a high school has the certification to teach this course, and it's taught 100% at the high school. Sometimes it's on the campus of a college. So a lot of my students actually will like spend half the day at the high school, half the day 10 minutes down the road at the community college, taking the course or courses. Sometimes it's a hybrid, and it now also is online. So unlike the AP, though, the college credit is generally based on the course grade, rather than like the exam, the 1 to 5. So as long as you usually pass it, you'll get college credit going into college. So some similarities, but definitely different.
Do you find in your experience that is that always true, or is it really? I know Washington, where I used to live, the state of Washington, had their program's called Running Start. So for the all this Washington state schools, they knew about Running Start, even some of the Oregon schools, and they had articulation and stuff moved over. But I mean, if a kid was applying to a school in Iowa, they weren't familiar with Running Start. So that required a lot more research to know how are they going to look at my Running Start classes. As far as from an admission standpoint of wanting or not wanting to admit a student, and then as far as how they come over, how have you seen that with your students through the years?
From the admission standpoint of how they're looking at and if the
Yeah.
credit
And do they
will,
look at
yeah,
those and then every school is going to be different.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
still challenging yourself, I would think they
Yeah.
would view it that way, but
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, dual enrollment, the courses, one, when you're applying, and any of the parents that are listening, that seniors that are working on the Common App now, they should be reported as college level coursework. So just a logistic thing there, like you will list your classes you're taking, but part of the Common App will ask you if you've taken courses through a college. That can be a summer program or something like a dual enrollment. So you do want to list it because they are college level official coursework. These grades are part of your student's academic record. And I think it's important to know that even if a student earns, a lot of college credits through these dual enrollments, you're still applying, as a first year applicant, so you shouldn't think, oh, I have 30 dual credits. I'm applying as a transfer. You're first year applicant. And from a mission standpoint, viewing a student's application, yeah, dual enrollment can give you a slight edge. But it's really, what is the course? Just like, if you're taking honors or APs, what is the course that you're taking? How does it fit into maybe the major that you're looking at? How rigorous is it? And you know, a college, may value the rigor during the admissions process, but then decline to award transfer credit. Same thing with APs. So it's really tough. I think the biggest thing is like if your high school even offers dual enrollment, are they courses that you think you want to take? Do you want to challenge yourself for a college credit? But like the AP, don't do it just because it's going to get you ahead of the game in college. But to answer your question, specifically, if they're looking at like dual enrollment versus AP, I wouldn't say there's a huge, advantage. If I had to pick, it would probably be AP just because it's standardized. The dual
mhm.
enrollment, the college, it's based on whatever college they're doing it through, and the high school teacher and the professor there, and the grade that you get in that. Whereas APs, you have that. standardized scoring system. And parents, some schools do offer both, and they'll ask like which one. So much goes into it there, and good to talk with your school counselor or college admission counselor through College Aid Pro to help you with that. Yeah,
I also found, just when my kids were in school, some of the kids that did the Running Start, the dual enrollment, they weren't in love with the whole high school environment necessarily. So it was
yeah,
the Bellevue College was a big school that did it in the Seattle area. So they were psyched to go
yeah,
already kind of be in college, and
yeah,
be off campus. So if you have a child that's like that, that's like, the whole high school thing,
yeah,
they're not in
for
love
sure.
with it, and they're kind of ready for the next stage. It helps them have a hybrid year, or
Yeah,
two where they
and
get
I
to
know
kind of start the college thing.
there aren't many schools around high schools around me that do this. I know, I work with a lot of Texas families. There's some schools there where, they specifically do have this amazing program that partners with one of the in-state colleges. And if they go to that college after doing dual enrollment, like they do start as a sophomore, but these are
Oh,
in college, these are very specific programs. Most high schools, you're not going to just decide to do that. It's something that
yeah.
they have partnered with and are in that. But if you're at a high school that does that, yeah, I think it's a great thing to look into.
Oops, sorry. My alarm just went off. Sorry about that. Okay. So that's AP and dual enrollment. So we've both thrown around the word honors classes. Is
Hmm.
where does that fall? Is that something that some high schools they don't have AP, they don't have dual enrollment and they call it honors, or where does that fit in?
Yeah, honors have been around for a long time. They're not the same as AP. They're not the same as dual enrollment. A school can have all three, but a school can't say, you know, our honors are the same as APs. That's not the case. That can't be. AP courses are extremely externally authorized. They're again a standardized curriculum that has that test at the end. Honors courses are designed locally by the high school or the district, or if it's a private school, that institution. Honors, quote unquote, can therefore mean different things at different high schools. Um, so they are, more advanced classes. So you may take freshman biology or freshman honors biology, and it just goes a little quicker. You're getting more content at a faster pace. It goes on your transcript. So college admission counselors will see it. It'll be designated honors class. But to be clear, it is not the same as AP or dual enrollment.
Right, right. I mean, I'm dating myself, but I grew up public school in New Jersey too. And back then we didn't even have AP. I don't know when AP started. We just had honors classes and, that was your only option. But now I think most schools offer, and there was no dual enrollment in my memory.
Hmm.
But the other thing to remember too, if you're stressing about, oh, my child's at a school, there aren't a lot of them, the schools send what's called a profile, and it shares about the high school because, like I said earlier, if you're applying to school in Nebraska or Iowa, they're not familiar with every high school. So they'll see, oh, there's 3 APs offered and this child took 2. Okay, they can't take 10 even though they got A's in all these other classes because they just don't exist. So that helps them kind of level the playing field between different schools. So just keep that in mind too, if that's something, you're thinking about as a parent. Okay, so this is great. Let's just touch on quickly how these affect the GPA if you're
Mhm.
taking dual enrollment versus AP.
Yeah. So, this is also another thing where, again, you want to put your blinders on as parents and students, not comparing GPAs to nearby public schools or maybe your friend's private school or, the GPA weighting is determined by the high school. There is no universal national system. It would be, I think, nice in some ways if there were, bad in others, but there isn't. It's determined by the high school that your kid goes to. Some schools, they give extra weight on their GPA for an AP dual enrollment, sometimes honors classes. Um, Others will give the same weight for every course. Um, some won't weight at all. So the simplest thing, like as a parent, whether you're a parent of a senior or incoming freshman, you should know, like, does your school weight grades? If they don't, if they're at a 4.0, your child could take 20 AP classes and the highest GPA they'll have is a 4.0. If they do weight, it could go, well over a 4. And what I've been to nearly 300 colleges. A lot of my really good friends in life are deans of admissions now. These are questions I've been asking since day one, and it really does not change. Like a really, really high GPA, say you have a 4.9 GPA because your school weights, is not going to like impress the admissions counselor. They're looking at the transcript, the 3 years, the classes you're taking, and how many A's you have in that class. And a lot of schools, most schools, to be honest, will kind of weight in their own system anyway.
Yeah,
Behind
they
closed,
recalculate the
yeah,
GPA
recalculate,
anyway.
in their
Yeah.
own way. So you, again, what I said earlier, don't compare to other schools. They will be looking at your student within the context of your high school. All right, your high school, weights, but only up to 4.5. You have a 4.4 that puts you potentially in the top 5% of your class. That's what they're going to zero in on. Not that another school you can have a 8.9 GPA.
Yeah, yeah. So don't stress about the GPA
Yeah.
basically because
Yeah.
a lot of stuff's going on.
And I do say that like with a caveat, because for the 99% of schools, the transcript is more than one number. Colleges examine the courses, the grades, the grade trends, and the school context, behind the GPA. But there are school like a Penn State, to my knowledge, still like they have, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, 90,000 people apply. They can't really review every single transcript and grades and all that. They just don't have the time. So like that GPA that you put in is often like, all right, that's what it is. Great. And a higher GPA can matter there. But hopefully you're at schools where the counselors know this, and, they're, if Penn State is your top school, they're working with them to make sure that, you look good there.
Yeah, yeah. And we touched on this before, but don't do this just as a cost saving measure on the financial side because it's
Yep.
not necessarily going to help your child graduate earlier. All the things that Joe's talking about need to be taken into account when you're deciding what your child should do with AP, dual enrollment, honors, whatever it happens to be. And just real quick, APs, we talked about there's a testing score, it's $100. To send AP scores costs money. To send SAT, ACT costs money. And there's application fees. So all these cha-chings that start hitting up is just the beginning of it as a parent with a college-bound kid. So you just want to keep that in mind too. I think sometimes parents are surprised, I have to pay College Board to send the SAT scores. And there's waivers out there, but I mean, they're not applicable to everybody. So it depends on income and different things. So just keep
Yeah.
all that in mind.
And I'd
So
say also, Peg, real quick, you can very much pay the College Board, which again runs AP, a lot of money to send your AP scores to each college that your kiddo's applying to. Do not do that. All right, you can. The system will allow you to. They will take your money gladly, but you can self-report the AP score on the Common App, which means you just put the test date, and the score 1 through 5, and colleges will review that just like grades, transcripts. They don't need the official report. If you end up going to that college, matriculating a bit later, they may require that official test report, but not until the spring, and you're just paying one school, not 20 schools. In addition, if you're a parent of a senior right now, have a Google sheet, each college that your student's applying to. For the SAT or ACT, make a list of which colleges require an official report at the time of applying. There are schools that still require that you pay and send your official reports, but a lot of colleges will again allow you just to self-report, and that can save you hundreds, if not
yeah,
thousands of
that's
dollars.
huge. That's a huge nugget right there,
Yeah.
everybody. So re-listen to what Joe just said. You don't have to necessarily send official no for that school because that could save you hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you just need to send it when you're actually picking a school and going. So that's huge. So one takeaway before we end here. What's the one thing you want to emphasize from our chat?
Um, I
If
think,
I know that's
yeah,
hard, but
no, college evaluate. I think we're talking all courses here, so colleges evaluate students, in context. The best academic plan is not the one with the most AP honors or dual enrollment labels. It's the one that challenges the student, your student, appropriately, reflects their interest, and allows them to learn and perform well. Um, Period. And I'd say, choose rigor with purpose, not rigor just for the appearance of to impress the colleges.
yeah, I think that's great. I love that phrase, rigor with purpose, and rigor knowing what your child is capable of so that they can have a good junior, senior year, do other things besides hit the books the whole time, have their outside, because many schools want to see a rounded kid with, hey, what do you love and how are you showing leadership, excelling here and there? And you need time to do that. So it's not
Yeah.
all about taking classes. So, all right. I love that. Well, Joe, as always, great to chat. You dropped some huge nuggets I learned, which I love. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining me today. And we will see everybody next time.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please follow us, share the show, or maybe even send it to someone who you think would enjoy it, a parent or maybe even a counselor. I'm your host, Peg Keough. Today I spoke with Joe Korfmacher, one of our CAP admissions experts. We did a deep dive into AP and honors classes as well as dual enrollment classes. This episode was produced by the wonderful I Am Masood. We'll see you back here next week.